Hi there, it's Florence here, and it has been quite a while. I mean, I released an episode maybe a month ago, but that was more of a suggested Christmas gift episode as opposed to a regular podcast episode, and so it's been a really long time since I last filmed a knitting video podcast episode. Therefore, I am confident that when I go through all the pieces that I want to show today, I will be forgetting some lovely things, and I'm also sure that I will remember them before the next episode, so maybe I'll include those next time. But I have plenty to go through today because today I'm going to be covering everything that I knitted over the Christmas period. I do have a full-time job, and so Christmas is basically the one time of year where I get a full week off work and I'm not like doing something else with my time, like on holiday or something. So it's probably the time of year where I have the most opportunity to knit. And so I did actually do quite a lot. As usual, before I jump into it, I will quickly mention what I'm wearing. I don't know whether I've actually worn this piece in an episode before, but this is my knitted magnum opus. This is the 1992 Alpakka Winter Olympics ski jumper by Dala of Norway. I knitted this a year ago, roughly, a little under a year ago, using Isager Jensen for the yarn, which is a lovely 100% wool. I need to finish my other one of these. I also am doing the Lillehammer 1994. I adore this jumper. I wear it at least once a week. It's so over the top, it's so silly. And I really think it sets the tone for this episode because this episode is going to include a lot of colour work. Currently, I just don't want to do anything else with my hands except knit colour work. And so there's going to be a lot shown in this episode, but let's just jump into it with this big old thing. I believe I didn't knit this one to any specific size. I think I just took a measurement of a jumper I liked, figured out the stitch count, and then went from there to fit the specific gauge that I got on my gauge swatch. I know that sounds kind of intimidating, but it was actually a pretty easy knit. I basically knitted this as 3 big tubes. I did no short rows, no colour work worked flat, just 3 big tubes, and then I steeked the neckline as well as the sleeve openings. And then I actually did the sleeves top down, so I knitted a couple of half sleeves, steeked and put them in, and then I finished the sleeve so I could figure out the length that I wanted it as I tried it on. I've talked a lot more about this jumper, which was quite a big project, in previous episodes. You can probably find those. It'll be the one where I have a picture of this in the thumbnail. Now I will move on to talking about all the new stuff that I have to show in this episode, because there's quite a bit. I guess I'll start with this one. This is one of the few non-colour work items in this episode, and I really want to put it on now, but I can't because of my microphone, which is a shame. So I'll just hold it up, and I do have some really nice pictures of me wearing this that one of my friends took. I will put them here. This is the Alex hood, I think it's called, from Knitting for Olive. I pretty much bought the yarn to make this as soon as the pattern released. I will start off by talking about the yarn. The yarn that I use for this is the yarn that is suggested in the pattern. The pattern is by Knitting for Olive, and so of course they suggest Knitting for Olive yarn. And for this I use the Knitting for Olive Merino and the Knitting for Olive Silk Mohair. I don't want to talk too much about this yarn because I feel like I've spoken about it in pretty much every single episode because it's a combination that I use really frequently. Needless to say, both of them are brilliant. I really enjoy the Knitting for Olive yarn. And the best thing, I think, about Knitting for Olive yarn is the colour selection. They have a brilliant colour selection. But I really wanted this to be like a true red. I didn't want it to be too orange. I think I have some here I can grab. Like most of the Knitting for Olive red colours, this one I think is pomegranate. Why does it look red on camera? In person, this is like a rusty orange colour, and most of their reddish yarn is very, very orange, and so I was really trying to find one that would be a true, cooler red colour, and I decided the best option would be the colour that's called Redcurrant. I had to order this directly from Knitting for Olive because there wasn't Redcurrant Merino and Mohair in stock anywhere in the UK. It is pretty cheap and easy to order from Knitting for Olive. I would rather support a local yarn shop, of course, but if you are somewhere where you can't get Knitting for Olive yarn in a local yarn shop, I will say their international shipping is really cheap and really fast. But yeah, I bought the colour Redcurrant. I was hoping it would be more of a true red, but to be honest, this still leans quite orange. The Merino, not so much, but the Mohair, I'm not even going to try and show it, it will not show up on camera. The Mohair still has quite an orange core to it. And so overall this is quite a fiery red, but I don't think that's put me off at all. I still think it's really cute, it reads as red, it looks great. Well, to be honest, I think I look quite silly wearing this, but silly in the best way. I love it. This yarn holds up pretty well because it's got mohair and it doesn't pill much. I find that this mohair is very soft. The only mohair that I've tried that I think might be softer is the one from Isager, but this one has a much better colour selection, so I reach for it all the time. It does shed horribly on the first couple of wears. Don't wear like a light coloured Knitting for Olive mohair garment for the first time around a man wearing black. I went to a May ball once in a freshly knitted Knitting for Olive cream mohair shawl, and every man wearing a suit around me ended up covered in white fluff. But after a couple of wears it gets better. And yeah, I think the price of the yarn is pretty reasonable for what it is. Moving on to talk about the pattern. I like the way this pattern works. To describe the construction, basically you start at the point of the scarf. This is a tapered scarf. I've spoken before about how I think tapered scarves are much better to knit than rectangular ones because it's basically half as much knitting. But yeah, you start at the point, you knit up the scarf until you get to the midpoint, and then you put the stitches on hold and you go to the other side and you start at the point. So you knit inwards from both ends and then you seam it up the middle. I just did like a Kitchener stitch and you can see the seam for sure, but like it's not offensive, it looks fine. And as you are knitting those scarf pieces, you sort of leave some stitches on hold so that you get a smooth transition from the scarf into the hood section. I don't know if you can see, but it looks really nice. And then you knit the hood, and that's also got a seam at the top. Now, if you want to knit this, and I do recommend it, I think it's a beautiful pattern, I love how it looks. I will say, I think you should modify the pattern. The scarf length on this, I think, is really inconvenient. So when I put on a scarf, I sort of put it around the back of my neck, so it's just like sitting like this, and then I'll take each side and wrap it once round and leave it hanging. You can't do that with this scarf at the standard length. It is too short, which I really dislike. And so I figured that this was going to be the case, and I decided to add some extra length to the scarf. For my one, I added 2 extra repeats of the increase section on each side of the scarf. So there's like 4 extra repeats worth of length on the scarf. And now when I wear the scarf like this, I'll put the picture back so you can see again. If I put it around the back of my neck and wrap both sides round, I can just tie the ends in the front and there's like this much hanging down. If I were to make this scarf again, I think I'd do 3 extra repeats on each side. For my one, where I did the 2 extra repeats on each side, and that was the only modification I made to the scarf, I had plenty of yarn still when I bought the amount of yarn that was suggested in the pattern. So definitely you could do 2 extra repeats with no problem. I can't speak for 3. I can't really remember how much yarn was left after this because I knitted this a few months ago now. But yes, this thing has been worn really heavily. I think it looks amazing with like a beige jacket. It makes your beige jacket into a cute look. Or like a grey jacket. Oh, it looks so good. I just love this piece. Like, I feel like it's one of those winter accessories that adds a lot of personality to your winter outfits. When you're putting a coat over the top of your cute outfit, it often feels like you're covering up everything that makes your outfit yours. And so it's lovely to have winter accessories that you can stick on top that are warm and also cute. I do think the hood on this looks a little bit sillier than some of the other hooded scarves, but it is quite practical. I've worn this in like snow. Well, it doesn't really snow in the UK, it sort of slains, like slush falls from the sky. I've worn it in that sort of British weather and it's been great. I just lay it flat to dry when I get back. I have worn it in the rain as well. I mean, it will keep your hair dry in a shower. I like that it really keeps like all of my hair dry. If I'm wearing a jacket with my hair inside and I put this on, it will keep all my hair dry so it doesn't fluff up during the day. I'll shut up now, but this is great. I really like it. I really recommend it. I have also got a finished jumper to show. I bought this yarn at the same time. I was buying the yarn for this, and since I was ordering it from Denmark, I decided to order yarn for another piece as well. And I think I spoke before about how I was undecided about which of the Northern Augustine's patterns I wanted to knit by Augustine's DK, Augustine's Denmark. And this was one of the contenders, which wasn't the one I ended up going with, but I couldn't get it out of my head, and so I ended up going back and knitting this one too. I knitted this to be my Christmas jumper, so I finished this a few days before Christmas and I blocked it, and then I wore it on Christmas Day paired with this. I think they look so cute together. This is the Augustine's number 4. You can see what the yoke looks like. This is a very easy and like standard sort of colourwork jumper. And I knitted it with 1 strand of Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino and 1 strand of Knitting for Olive Mohair. So again, I really enjoy this yarn combination. It's one I've used a bunch before. It wears pretty well because of the mohair. The heavy merino, I've said before, it isn't as soft as the standard knitting for olive merino. It feels almost hard, but it's not scratchy in the slightest, and so I love it. It's a yarn I keep going back to. It's one of my all-time favorites. The colours that I used for this were, for the grey part, it is pearl grey, and then for these bows, which maybe kind of look grey on camera, they are blue. I used the colour Dusty Petroleum Blue. And both the heavy merino and the mohair are in the same colour. Actually, I think I mentioned in the last episode, I got this yarn, I was really excited to start, and I opened it up and they'd sent me the wrong colour of mohair. It was the colour Misty Morning, which is a colour I actually use for a different project. It's like a very grey but slightly beige colour. And at the time I felt really silly telling them that they'd sent me the wrong colour, because it's quite a subtle difference, and if I'd used the Misty Morning mohair, it probably would have looked fine. But credits to Knitting for Olive, as soon as I told them, like within hours of telling them that they'd sent me the wrong colour, they shipped me the correct colour. And when I actually knitted it up, I ended up being really happy that I had gone to the trouble to ask for the mohair to be switched, because I think that this really sort of pale, pure grey colour is very, very pretty and pairs great with the blue. And I think that if I'd used that more brownish mohair, it wouldn't have looked quite as good. They did also let me keep the Misty Morning mohair, so I have, I think, like 5 balls of pale beige mohair, which is not a very inconvenient thing to have. Like, I will use that for something else. So yes, this yarn combination is great. This thing is knitted on, I want to say 5.5mm needles, in which case I think I probably did the yoke on 6mm needles, because I normally go up ½ millimeter for colour work. I am very aware of the fact that my colour work gauge pulls a little bit tighter, but that means that this is a very quick knit. It doesn't use too much yarn, and it was something I knitted within a week because I wanted to wear it for Christmas. Okay, so that's it for the yarn. I mean, what you see is what you get. It looks lovely, it feels great, lovely yarn combination. I'll talk briefly about the pattern. This was, well, it wasn't my first time knitting a jumper by Augustine's, because I actually have another one that I started first, but that one is still in progress. It was my first time completing a jumper by Augustine's, and I don't have anything bad to say about the pattern. It's a very basic jumper. I'm pretty sure this one has no short rows in it. I might be wrong about that. I definitely don't think I did any short rows, but it's possible I was just being lazy. It's just like a colour work chart for the yoke, and then I put the pattern away and just knitted the rest as standard. It does have a folded collar. In the pattern, I recall it does ask you to do a folded collar in a way that I don't very much like. I think you're supposed to do some kind of like magic cast on or double-sided cast on, and then knit the collar, and then you knit the live stitches together with the stitches that were formed by the other half of the cast on to make a folded collar. As soon as I see instructions like that, I just like mentally throw them out, and I just do a collar my standard way for a folded collar, which is just to knit a tube and then fold it and knit it together with the cast on edge. I also never bother with any pattern that tells you to sew it down after you've finished, because I find it's much harder to get that sewed down edge to be like nicely stretchy afterwards compared to knitting the stitches together. Actually, now I'm probably better at seaming the folded edge down. It would probably be fine, but knitting together the cast on edge with the live stitches is not a hard thing to do, and it's just the way I always do a folded collar. I think this pattern also tells you to do folded cuffs and maybe also the bottom of the jumper, and I didn't do any of that. It's a lot of effort, and I was worried it would just look too bulky, although I guess it does kind of go with the vibe of the jumper. Like, it's kind of thick and puffy, and maybe it would be kind of cute. But these are just my standard rib, 1x1 rib cuffs, and I did an Italian bind off, which is my favourite bind off to use. I will say with this, I made the sleeves way too short. Like, it's fine if my arms are by my side, but if I put my hands up like this, you can see these sleeves still, you know, kind of reach my hands. This one would be like down here if I put my arms like this. That was a mistake. It was me being in a rush to get it done for Christmas and me being lazy, and hopefully I'll fix it before the next episode, because I really do like this jumper. I have been wearing it anyway. I know some people enjoy having a shorter sleeve like that. I'm not one of those people. I like to be able to retract my hands inside my sleeves. However inconvenient it is to have that much fabric on your wrists. The other thing I want to say about the pattern is that this is deceptively difficult. Like, I think I can say with confidence that this is probably harder colour work than this thing that I'm wearing. Even though this looks more complicated and is a lot more volume of knitting, this is more difficult because I don't know how to describe it. Like, this is a pattern that's designed to be easy in stranded colour work. This is a pattern that's designed to look like cute bows. And so you end up with a lot of what would be extremely long floats, particularly in this sort of scalloped garland part at the top, also in the bows though. And so you have to catch your floats a lot to get it to sit really smooth and pretty. And what I found was difficult is you're catching floats all the time. The pattern doesn't tell you where to catch floats, so you're just sort of making it up as you go along. If you're not paying attention, at least I find the way that I catch floats and increase, if I catch a float and then have to increase adjacent to the stitch where I caught the float in the next round, then the contrast colour shows through where I've increased. And so because I wasn't always paying that much attention to where I was catching my floats, I had to move some of the increases to get them to not show little bits of the blue colour. I think if you are concerned about this and you're wanting to knit this jumper, my recommendation would be to pick a colour that isn't going to like show through horribly if you can slightly see where you've caught your floats. So like this blue, it's not that dark and it's not that different to the grey. It's high enough contrast that the design shows up nicely, but if it's showing through a tiny bit between the grey stitches, like you're not going to notice it. I think the original version of this jumper is a sort of creamy beige colour with red bows, and I think that would have been a much more stressful knitting experience. So yeah, I really wouldn't recommend this one to first time colourwork knitters, even though it looks simple. It's just a little bit fiddlier than you think it's going to be, I guess. I wonder if I can show you the inside. I don't know, I always think the inside looks really cool. Here's what mine looks like. You can see there are a lot of floats caught all the way throughout this piece. Oh, and in terms of it not having short rows, or me not putting short rows in, I would rather it did have short rows. To be honest, I think it would be quite easy to put them in, particularly here at the top where the colourwork is very simple. But what I do when I have a pattern like this that doesn't have short rows is when I block it quite aggressively with the front being lower than the back at the neck, and then still trying to line up the bottom of the jumper. And I think that blocking makes it fit a little bit better. Now, if you know me, you'll know that my current knitting addiction within the category of colourwork, like my preferred subcategory is colourwork mittens. I have been in love with colourwork mittens. I do have 2 more colourwork jumpers to show that are works in progress. Oh no, 3 more colourwork jumpers to show that are works in progress. But I'll take a little colourwork jumper break to talk about mittens. I knitted a few Christmas presents for people. I didn't even take pictures of most of them. I made a weekend hat by Petite Knit for my dad and for my friends, and I made my mum a pair of socks that were teal and bright pink. Not my kind of colours, but colours that I know she really likes. They went down really well. The one that I really did want to show, because I think they're beautiful, I was very sad not to keep them for myself and I wanted to talk briefly about them, is the gift that I made for my sister, which is a pair of colourwork mittens. She specifically asked for colourwork mittens, which made me quite excited because I love making them. And I don't have them anymore, of course, but I'll put pictures here. I did take a lot of pictures after giving them to her. I do have the pattern. It's from a book. This book is Knitted Calevala from Jenna Kostet, or Jenna Kostet, I don't know. I think these are like patterns that are designed, inspired by Finnish folk poetry. I don't really know. Oh, and I should say there are 2 of these books. They're both called Knitted Calevala, but the second one's like Knitted Calevala 2. And I'm not sure how obvious it is that that one is 2. This is from the first one, which is the one with the red text on the cover. This one has quite a lot of accessories in. I'm pretty sure the second one doesn't have any mittens, which makes me slightly sad. Where is the pattern I made? Ah, here. It looks like this in the book. And it's called the Suo Lauli mittens. Since I don't have the mittens with me, I'm aware this probably isn't the most exciting viewing, so I'll try to talk very quickly about them. For these, I'll move this way so I can put the picture here permanently while I'm talking. For these, I used Sandnes Garn Peer Gynt. It's a DK weight 100% Norwegian wool and I love it. The colours have numbers. I never remember what the numbers are, but I will have the colours that I used listed in the description in case you want to find them. The red is the one that's just a really, really red. It's hard to miss. And the other colour that I used is, I think it's called like Marzipan or something. It's a really pale colour, but I specifically used the Tweed version with rainbowy tweed flecks. It has some red in, which I think ties it in nicely with the other colour that I used for the mittens. It also has like blue and yellow flecks. It's very pretty. I would probably knit a whole jumper with it at some point. Now, for the cuff of these mittens, I didn't follow the pattern. You can see if I hold the book up, the mittens are supposed to have this sort of folded cuff at the top. I did my favourite cuff for mittens, which is 2 pearl rows, 1 Latvian braid, 11 rounds of corrugated rib, 2x2 corrugated rib, and then another Latvian braid, and then I start on the mitten. I don't think I've ever given explicit instructions for how I do my mitten cuffs before, but that's the way that I do them. All of the mittens I've made in 2024 have that cuff on them. These mittens do come in a couple of different sizes. 2 sizes, extra small, small, and medium large. I definitely made the medium large. I have huge hands. I assume my sister, who's a little bit taller than me, has similarly sized hands. So I just made the medium large, and instead of following any gauge instructions in the pattern or gauge swatching, because it's a yarn combination that I'm very familiar with for mittens, I just knitted it with the needle size that I knew works well for fitting me with this stitch count. That's a mouthful, but maybe you get what I mean. Like, I picked the needle size that I know would make this stitch count fit my hands. And these mittens in this size, I think they're 52 stitch mittens. 52 stitches is the same size or same stitch count as these Alma mittens, which I've worn a lot this winter. And for this pair, I used 3.5mm needles for the cuff and 4mm needles for the rest of the mitten. Overall, I love these. I will say kind of in a similar way to that bow sweater, the Northern Augustine's number 4. This is another pattern where that design isn't designed to be easy to knit in stranded colourwork. It's designed to have a really cool look to it. And I love the look, but again, there are a lot of extremely long floats in these mittens. They're definitely more fiddly and harder to make look really clean and pretty than, say, these Alma mittens, which are very easy and very mindless to knit. But I do think it's totally worth it for the result. They're beautiful. I'll change the picture now and put some pictures of the inside of the hand so that you can see there's this sort of growing leaf pattern up the thumb that I think is gorgeous. My only comment on the pattern, and if I make these again, I think there's a high chance I will make them again for myself because I really would like a pair. The only modification that I would make is I would add a few extra stitches to the thumb. I think I would alter the chart for the inside part of the hand so that the thumb gusset is a little bit wider. I just found that the thumb was quite tight. Even I think I went up a needle size or 2 relative to the pattern. Even with that, I still found that the thumb was a little bit on the tighter side. It wasn't uncomfortably tight, but I would just rather have an extra 2 stitches or something in that thumb. When I was looking at these mittens on Ravelry, I'm pretty sure I did also see other people who had the same comment about the thumb size, so it's something to keep in mind if you want to make these mittens. Overall, I was so happy with the result. I think they're completely beautiful. I know that there is at least 1, possibly even 2 jumper patterns in this book, maybe in the second book, I'm not sure. I do have both books, which use a similar design, like a similar motif. I think there's like a round yoke and then a drop shoulder with the design around the bottom. I think there's a pretty high chance that I will make at least one of those jumpers at some point because I think the motif is really, really beautiful. I enjoy this book very much. It's the sort of thing which, well, when I see beginner knitters, or not necessarily beginners, but like young people knitting their beige H&M looking petite knit jumpers. Not that there is anything wrong with like a beige petite knit jumper. They're some of my most worn. They're wonderful. They fit beautifully. They look so clean. I just wonder if their future will look like mine, where I went from only knitting beige plain stockinette jumpers to just being completely obsessed with cables and colourwork and doing loads of like less trendy, traditionally knitty looking stuff. I certainly wouldn't have anticipated I would end up liking a book like this so much. But yeah, I love it. I love most of the designs. It's just interesting to see how my tastes change. I don't know if that's me getting older or trends changing and me following them without realising it or what, but my tastes have definitely changed quite a bit. Yeah, it's a lovely book. I know it's really popular and for good reason. The other pair of mittens I have, I just finished yesterday, I think. So one of my friends made the mistake of saying that he liked my mittens. If you're a friend of mine, don't say that to me if you don't want a pair of mittens, because I will be making you a pair of mittens whether you like it or not. I had him try on some of the mittens that I already had that I made for myself, because my hands are quite big, my mittens are generally quite large. They were nowhere near big enough for him, and so I've had to go on a little bit of an adventure to make some XL mittens for this guy. As I was saying when I was talking about the Suolauli mittens, I generally have this method for making mittens fit where I kind of stick to the same yarn combinations and gauges all the time, and then I just pick a pattern with a differing stitch count to make sure that they're the right size. And so based on how my mittens fit him, I ended up deciding to make a pair of 56 stitch mittens, and therefore I just picked the pattern in my collection that happened to be 56 stitches, and that is the design that he gets. So the yarn combination that I used here is the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino, and then again I use a 3.5mm needle for the cuff and a 4mm needle for the rest of the mitten. I should say my colourwork gauge is pretty tight, so if you don't have such tight colourwork gauge, then maybe you need to go down a needle size for that colourwork. The pattern that I used, I think they're called the Margaretta mittens, and they're by Knit Lidt. I'll put their username here. They have a lot of very similar mitten patterns like this, and they also have these sorts of designs on jumpers and stuff, if this is a sort of motif that you enjoy. I think these in particular are the Margaretta Mittens Winter Edition, so they're sort of DK or Aran weight, and they come in 3 sizes, which is really great. Like if you buy this one pattern, I think I'm pretty sure there are 3 different sizes included. This is the biggest of the 3 sizes, and as I said, it's a 56 stitch mitten. Something else I like about this pattern is it has a massive thumb gusset. This thing has such a roomy thumb, or like this part of your hand, this part here, really has a lot of space compared to some other mittens, particularly those that have like flat thumb gussets that have the same number of stitches put on hold with the thumb as a cast on. Something like this, where this thumb basically lies flat against the mitten and in line with the rest of the mitten. In contrast, this thing has a lot of stitches increased, and so this thumb sits out at an angle, and this part of the mitten ends up with a lot more room. Oh, I'm not doing this in a very logical way, but the colours that I use for this, the off-white colour is Marzipan. This is a beautiful greyish cream, it's lovely. This colour here is not something I would normally use. Maybe it looks black on camera. This is the colour Bordeaux. It's a super dark burgundy colour, almost black. It looks lovely. And the pattern calls for 3 colour colourwork. I quite frankly have no interest in doing 3 colour colourwork. It seems like a chore. So I took the easy route instead, and I duplicate stitched middles in a different colour onto all of the flowers on the outside of the mitten, and then wove in all of those ends. For the flower centres, I used Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino again, so it's all the same yarn. This is Dusty Petroleum Blue. It was left over from the yoke of my Northern Augustines number 4. These mittens are really big. I mean, if I pull them all the way up over my wrists, then my fingers maybe go to the end, but if I just have them sit kind of where they sit, I can fold the ends over like this, and my hands are huge. But I think they look beautiful. They have the same pattern on the inside and the outside of the mitten, my usual cuff, the Latvian braids, and the 2x2 corrugated rib. If they don't fit him, I will just take these for myself, because I think if I was going to go somewhere actually cold, like colder than the UK, which does not get cold in the winter at all, and I wanted to wear like some wool gloves, like liner gloves underneath my mittens, I think this would be a pretty good size for me. And so I definitely think I would get use out of these. If they don't fit him, I will enjoy these mittens very much myself. I don't really know what else to say about them. Like, I think they look so good. I really like how like the outside has the blue centers and then the inside doesn't, so they are noticeably different. I love how roomy this thumb gusset is. They're so comfortable. I may well end up making a pair of these mittens for myself. They're beautiful. They're amazing. Mittens make me so happy. Is this a look with the jumper and the mittens, or is it too much? I don't know. He'd better be grateful for these, because I like them so, so much. So yes, I recommend this pattern to people who like roomy thumb gussets, and want a mitten pattern that will do sizes from a small women's size up to a large men's size. Oh, my camera's running out of battery. I'll be back shortly. Hello again. I went and had coffee and pasta, and now I'm back. Maybe my camera died to save you all from hearing me going on more about how much I love these mittens. I'll move on. I have 3 colourwork jumpers in progress, and I need to jump into those. I guess I'll start off with this one. This is the one I have the most progress on. I started this, I want to say in October, and then I abandoned it for 3 months. And yeah, when I was going through my stuff the other day, I found these mittens. Let me show you properly. These are mittens that I made for myself last year, or by last year I mean I guess the winter, last winter. And these are, I think the pattern is called Vikvavet and they're by Skeinde. I don't like the thumb gusset on them, but other than that I think they're really, really beautiful. And I realised that this in progress jumper and these mittens are very similar in colour, like they're both a sort of pale grey and dark brown, and I just thought they would look so beautiful together. I'm taking a long weekend off next weekend. I'm taking Friday afternoon off and Monday off and probably going on a trip somewhere, and so I really wanted to have this jumper done so that I could wear it. Like once I have a vision for my outfit on a certain weekend, I really can't step back from that. So I'm pushing to finish this jumper today or tomorrow so that it has time to dry. This pattern is Northern Augustine's number 1, I think, also from Augustine's DK. So it's the same designer and same series as this bow jumper, but this is a slightly older pattern from that series. Augustine's DK does a lot of this style of jumper. Actually, there was one release that I think I might have to make. We'll put a picture here. Is this not the most beautiful jumper you've ever seen? I need it, and I need it in this exact yarn combination, so I need to figure out how to get my hands on it. But anyway, I am knitting this with the yarn that I picked up when I was in Helsinki in the summer. This is from Vuonue, and the yarn is called Tilta, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the colour. And then there's a lot of yarn involved in this. This pale one is the Fibre company Amble, so this is a British wool, I think. And then I'm using 2 different mohairs. This one is Knitting for Olive, this one is Isager. All of the colours and stuff I guess will be in the description if I can remember or find out what they are. I am knitting this off gauge. I don't remember what size I was knitting. I don't remember what needle sizes I was using. I left this project on hold for far too long and now I'm having to try and figure it out as I go. So now I'm using a 5.5mm needle for the sleeve at least, and 4.5mm for the ribbing. And I think what happened is I was knitting this off gauge. I did size up in order to account for the fact that my gauge was tighter than the pattern should be, but the measurement of the body is still definitely too small for my tastes. And so I think what I did was I cast on an extra 5 underarm stitches for a total of 15, which is a lot of underarm stitches, particularly for a jumper knitted on 5.5mm needles. But I think it fits okay, and I think that those stitches were much needed to get the body big enough. I'm still hoping it will grow quite a bit when I block it. This yarn combination is just completely wonderful. I am such a big fan of this dark brown Tilta. I really wish that I could get more of it. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can get it in the UK. I picked it up in Snurre in Helsinki because I was particularly looking for Finnish yarn as a sort of souvenir from my trip, and I have really fallen in love with it. I think that particularly with the mohair, this jumper is super warm and soft enough to wear comfortably even though it has a pretty high neck, while still feeling woolly. Like, it feels pretty substantial. I think that this thing will be really, really warm. Overall, I just adore this jumper. I can't wait to have it finished. I kind of regret abandoning it for 3 months because now I'm starting to knit it again. I'm remembering how much I loved this yarn, how much I love the look of the jumper. I just think it's beautiful. And I will finish it in time to wear it next weekend with these mittens because it will be such a look. I really had forgotten how much I love these mittens. Okay, on to colourwork jumper number 2, maybe? I have this one. I spoke about this magazine in a previous episode. You guys told me it is just pronounced Lane, so I was overthinking it. This is the special issue of Lane, which is called Nordic Knits, which has 17 patterns by designers from the Nordics or with families from the Nordics. They're releasing a new one of these that's just Finnish knits, and I am debating picking it up as well, but I am definitely getting my money's worth out of this particular issue. When I showed this in a previous episode, I think I showed like 3 jumpers in this magazine that I would knit, and I currently have 2 of them on my needles. So this one is called Hilda. It is by Ronja Häkälähtö. I don't know how to pronounce it. And it is a top down in the round yoke jumper with colourwork bands on it. This jumper has a lot of stuff that I like. It has a folded collar, it has short row shaping. With a colourwork design like this, where the colourwork is in a band that sits lower down on the yoke, it's really easy to put in short row shaping and have the jumper sit really nicely, so I like that. There are some things that I don't like about this. I think in the picture, I don't know if you can see, I'm convinced that the yoke is too short. Like, I think it's kind of bunching weirdly on the model, which wasn't a great sign. And also this is one of those patterns that's knitted at a DK gauge using fingering weight yarn, which is just like a personal thing that I strongly dislike. I totally get why some people like it. It's not for me. I like my jumpers to feel substantial, and I don't want to have very loose gauge knitwear. So I am knitting this in the recommended yarn, which is Tukuwool fingering, but I am holding it with something else to get it up to a proper DK gauge so that I don't feel like the fabric is too floppy and sparse and transparent. Now there's a lot that I love about this jumper. I will say first off, I blocked this halfway through because I was having some problems with my colourwork gauge. This is probably just a me thing. I've said my colourwork gauge is very tight. I did go up a needle size for every colourwork band on this and then return to my stockinette needle size, and yet I still feel like the colourwork is cinching the jumper in a little bit. It's not so bad after blocking. The place where it's the most noticeable is on the yoke, if I hold this up. With this round yoke, you have this sort of challenge where this particular colourwork design isn't one where you can easily put increases within the colourwork band. So you have to position all of the increases in the yoke before or after the colourwork band. It is a pretty wide band to not include any increases, and what that means is you end up with very rapid increases before the colourwork band, and then this sort of tighter tension colourwork band, and then more rapid increases afterwards to make up for this big chunk where there are no increases. Now I've blocked this and I had a really hard time blocking it flat. Like the stockinette really wanted to pucker before and after the colourwork band. I think with wear, as everything relaxes and like gravity stretches that colourwork band out, it will probably get better, and I don't think it looks bad, but definitely it's a little bit of a challenging yoke fit. I sized up 1 or 2 sizes, and the yoke depth is fine on me. I was really worried that it would be too short based on the pictures, but it actually fits perfectly. It looks so good. So yeah, I did a mid-project block so that I could check that the sleeve length was correct. And also my sleeves were really being cinched in where the colourwork was. You can see they still are a little bit after blocking. I wanted to check that that was kind of okay before I knitted the second sleeve in case I had to rip both of them out. But overall, I'm really happy with it. I think this thing is way prettier than I was expecting it to be, actually. I think it's really striking and really beautiful. I love this colourwork motif. And so I will go ahead and knit the second sleeve, and I'm super, super happy with this. The yarn, I don't know if I actually mentioned, I'm using, as I said, Tukuwool fingering. The colour wasn't quite what I was hoping for. I was hoping this would be more like an off-white than a grey. I guess I wasn't paying very much attention. It's definitely a mid-grey. I don't remember the colour names, but they will be listed in the description. And then I'm holding it with, what's it called? Sandnes Garn Alpakka Følgetråd. The like alpaca lace weight from Sandnes Garn. It's basically the same as the Alpakka one or Følgetråd Alva. They're all kind of the same thing. This was just what was available at the same store where I was buying the Tukuwool fingering. I would have used Tukuwool DK for this, but unfortunately, and I've complained extensively about this, Tukuwool seem to ship to just about everywhere in the world except the UK, which they said is because of Brexit, but they do also ship to, you know, loads of non-EU countries. So that's really frustrating. I made an Instagram story complaining about it, and like, I understand it's probably very inconvenient to ship to the UK, so I do get it, but I was sad because I really like this yarn. I made an Instagram story where I talked about how sad I was, and then Tukuwool followed me on Instagram. Like, you want to hear me complaining about my sadness at not being able to get my hands on your lovely yarn? But the fingering weight one is available at one store in the UK, and it works up nicely at a DK gauge, held with something else. Yeah, overall, I'm really happy with this so far. And then over Christmas, I obviously decided to put this for a mid-project block, which meant I couldn't work on it. It was the only big project I brought with me when I went home for Christmas. And so I was desperately trying to find some more yarn. And in rural Suffolk, the only yarn I could track down was Rowan. So I'm knitting a project with Rowan felted tweed. I'm not a huge fan of Rowan yarn in general. I find it's quite expensive for what it is. But the felted tweed is quite pretty. It's very alpaca-y, which isn't necessarily my preference. This is what I have going on so far. It's very hard to show, but I have some colour work in progress. This is another pattern from this Lane Nordic Knits thing. And this one is called Hjartrøsa, and it's by Skander, who's the designer who designed those mittens I kept showing the Vic Vivette. It has this sort of, what's this called? Boat neck. It's steeked and it's knitted from the top down. And it has a folded edge along the top, so it's almost like a facing on the neck hole, which I think is really cool. So you can see I've done the folded edge here. Now I'm just knitting a big tube. And these stitches here are where I'm going to steek it to add the sleeves in. I think it's going to be really nice. These colours are again very much not what I hoped for, and I am almost tempted to give up on this project because I really do not like this blue. It's just not my kind of blue. It's like subtly incorrect. It's too green for my tastes. But I might just push through because I think it will still be a pretty jumper in the end. My camera is struggling, so I'm going to jump on to show yarn that I picked up. I just have one to show today. I picked this up for a video tutorial, which is why I wanted to show it. I ordered from My Ivory Room, which is my favourite yarn shop in London. Valentina, who runs that shop, has impeccable taste in yarn. Like, everything she sells is just beautiful. It's basically my favourite place to go for yarn, and every time I go there, there's something new I want to try out. But this time I ordered something that I've used before. My yarn is here. She has also included something else. Ooh. Okay, this is a gift. I did not buy this, but she has also put in a needle set of Koshitsu C-knit. These are the new C-knit curve needles. These are my favourite needles, not the curve ones in particular, but the regular C-knit interchangeables. I bought a set 2 years ago, and I've basically used them for almost all my projects since. They're amazing needles. And they've just released this new curve series. Oh my goodness. This has 3.5 millimeters up to 5 millimeters and matching cables. That is just incredible. A huge thank you to Valentina for that, because I've been really wanting to try those. Anyway, here's the yarn. I'm going to be working on a colourwork jumper tutorial for my channel. I just knit colourwork jumpers at the moment. I'm loving it, and I want to share that joy with other people, particularly because I know that colourwork looks really intimidating, even though it's not hard at all. And so I picked up this yarn to design a colourwork jumper. This is Fibre from Ravelry. I've made a cardigan with it before. It's very affordable. It's quite thick, which I think is great for a beginner. Like, you want to be able to move quickly through the project. It's a beautiful Norwegian wool, and it's pretty soft after washing. This is the main colour for the jumper. It's not my favourite, but it's what was in stock. And then I love these contrast colours. I love the blue and the orange together. I'm so excited to work on this, and I'm so excited to use this yarn again because I enjoyed it very much. I did also buy one more yarn, or 2 colours. This is not from My Ivory Room, but I'll show it very quickly. I was repairing some socks for a friend, and they were Aran weight, and so I had to find an Aran weight sock yarn. And I bought some of this Novita 7 Brothers yarn. I have been loving DK and Aran weight socks in the recent chilly weather here, and so I bought some more for myself. This is 7 Brothers Numi, which is tweed. And I got this pale blue with rainbow, and also this beige tweed. I'm so excited to use these to make some like chunky DK to Aran weight socks. This is supposed to be knitted on 3.5mm needles. I normally use 3mm needles for DK socks, so maybe this is a little bit thicker. I am extremely excited to try this out. I think I will wear socks made with this a lot, and they are so quick to knit. It's like you can knit a sock in a long evening. It's wonderful. Okay, before my camera dies, thank you very much for watching. I'll be back again soon with another video. I have more stuff I haven't showed in this episode because my camera is stressing me out too much. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.